Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy here. Today, I have my friend's 1999 Chevrolet Tahoe here, and his complaint today was he was getting a bit of noise coming from his brakes. I took it for a test drive and found that the noise was coming from the rear brakes and decided to pull the wheels and pull the drums and get a look at everything and inspect it. I found something pretty interesting when I did that, so why don't you come over and see what I found. A lot of you asked me about jacking up a vehicle. I just jacked it up by the differential itself, and then I rested it down on jack stands on the axle assembly. But I left the jack in place because it's going to be easier to, lift it off the jack stands and get it down just by leaving it there. Plus it leaves like an extra thing to hold it with. Now before we get down and dirty with this, and actually before you start smacking with a hammer, just throw some safety glasses on. Now once you get the wheel off, probably the first hurdle that you're going to need to overcome is removing the drum from the hub assembly. A lot of times it's probably going to be rusted into place. Standard practice, at least for me, has been to just take a hammer and hit it between the studs around the outside here, and eventually what that does is it knocks it loose from the hub. That may not be the case. What you may find sometimes is that it's extremely difficult to get off, and you can hit it all day long and nothing happens. Now I want you to resist the temptation of trying to pry in this area here. Don't take a pry bar and stick it in here, because basically you could warp the backing plate, you could actually chip and damage the drum itself. Now there is a special tool that you can use for this, and it is a drum removal tool. You may be able to rent this from a local auto parts store or something, but in essence what it is, it's like a giant puller that goes on the outside of the drum, hooks into the back here, and pushes against the center portion and pulls this whole drum assembly off. Now this being my friend's car, I actually work on it quite often, and I have removed these rear brakes before and serviced them. And I put a little bit of anti-seize around the hub, and therefore I'm just able to just pull this right off. But before we go any further, before we pull this drum all the way off, know that there's going to be some brake dust that's going to come flying out of here. And that's not necessarily stuff that you want to breathe in. Something you might want to do to try to minimize the amount of dust in your shop or whatever is just, if you can, I know some areas don't allow you to have like spray aerosol cans like this, but if you can, get some, this is just regular brake cleaner. Just spray it in the back here and around the outside, and what that'll do is that'll help minimize some of that dust. Again, it'll help minimize the amount of dust that comes out when you remove the drum. And as you can see, there's a fair amount of dust and junk that's down in there that we'll eventually end up cleaning out. The first thing you may notice is that there is plenty of friction material left on this shoe. And I will agree, I mean, it's not really in need of shoe replacement. But if you look at the outside here, you see all those cracks? Those cracks are from excessive heat. And what that's done is, and to be honest, I'm not really a fan of bonded shoes. And these shoes are bonded, or the other option is riveted. So you'll see like little rivet heads that actually hold the friction material onto the backing material. You don't necessarily have that here. And this is one of the reasons why I don't like bonded brake linings, is because as you can see right here, it's starting to actually come loose. Now that may be because this was overheated at some point, not really sure, but I'm fairly certain that this is the reason why these brakes are making the noise that they're making. Plus you can see this really shiny spot of this shoe right here. And you can sort of see on the inside you've got a shiny spot here. Could have been a piece of debris or something that got lodged in there that also could be contributing to the noise. But basically what this boils down to is you can see this on the front also, is what I'm going to end up doing here is I'm going to replace these brake shoes. And the one that'll wear the most is the front one, because that's where most of the stopping is done. And drum brakes honestly last a really long time. I've seen them well over 100,000 miles on an original set of shoes. But that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go through the process of replacing these shoes. This is why I'm replacing these shoes. Now that I have the drum off and I've got my pan positioned underneath, in fact, I'm going to get myself a new can of brake clean here, is I'm just going to clean this whole area and just free it of any dust. So that way while I'm working, I don't get a lot of dust everywhere. Like I said, it's not necessarily stuff that you want to breathe in. Now we need to get some brake tools so that we can remove these springs and remove these shoes in the back here. But this way you can just get a look at what you're dealing with before you do any removing. These are the tools that I'm going to be using today. You can pick up brake tools very inexpensively, but if you're going to be doing rear drum brakes, you really need the proper tools to do so. This is called a brake spoon. This is actually for adjusting at the end, and I think it's going to be useless on this one because I don't think there's a hole in the backing plate so that I can gain access to the adjuster. But this is something that you would insert through the back of the backing plate assembly and be able to work the adjuster. This guy right here, you'd be able to sneak through the back. And that's what this is designed to do. It's designed to grab this and move it. But as I said, GM I guess doesn't like me because they put the plugs there, but all they needed to do was knock this out and put a rubber insert in there, but they don't have it. And moving down the line, this is the brake spring removal / installer tool, and this removes the other hold down springs. I'm not exactly sure what the name of this is. And then of course you need your trusty hammer. Here's another tip to help you minimize the fear here. It's that just do one side at a time. That way, if you lose track of where your springs are and all this stuff, you can just go to the other side and know that it's a mirror image. So you have a good idea of where things are supposed to go. The astute viewer will note that these are brand new shoes that are on this assembly and new hardware and everything else. So what happened, Eric? Well, what happened is I didn't have enough time to shoot the video when I actually did this brake job, but I've actually brought the truck back in to finish shooting the video. So even though you see new parts, I'm still going to go through the process as if I was doing it for the first time so that you get an idea of what I did in order to accomplish basically what you see here. First thing we need to do is we need to get these return springs off. And to do that, I'm going to use my spring removal tool. This came in a brake hardware removal kit. And you know what? These are not that expensive. People ask me if they can use pliers or screwdrivers. Just know that these springs, they pack a punch. And if this gets a hold of you, this can really tear you up. So the right tools are going to make all the difference. I bet you for less than $20 you can have all the tools that you need to do this. So make the investment, just be done with it. You want to take this hook and you want to basically hook it under the spring and just sort of twist. So I'll put the tool on, the pin, give it a twist, and then pull back, and that pretty much takes that spring off. Now that it's unhooked from the pin and the tension is off it, you just sort of pull it down and sort of work it out. It's got kind of a goofy end on it. But when I set this down, I'm going to set this down on this left-hand side in front of this brake assembly. Even if I were replacing the hardware, I still want to get to know what these springs look like. Now this other side may look pretty intimidating because the spring is actually attached to this rod here that goes down to this parking brake assembly. But I'm going to treat it in pretty much exactly the same way, in that I'm just going to come up in here and take the tension off with this rod up here. So I'll just use that same tool, sort of twist. Sorry about that. As you can see, the top of the self-adjuster assembly hooks on over here. And then there's this spring that also hooks into the shoe. Let me go to two hands. Push down on that. That'll pull that out. Makes things a lot easier. Once again, you just sort of fish the spring out. It's got like a goofy little hook on it. When I lay these down, I'm going to lay them in the sort of the direction that they go. Now it looks like some stuff has come apart, like this little retainer up here. Not a big deal. These little rods that go into the wheel cylinder, don't worry about those. Just don't step on the brakes at all when you've got this apart, because what'll happen is it'll push the insides of the wheel cylinder out and could cause damage. But while you're here and we're talking about the wheel cylinder, look for any wetness or moisture around here, which could indicate that the wheel cylinder is leaking internally. If it is, you should replace it. Now I'm glad I'm showing you this on the new spring retainers here, but do you see how there's that slot there? And there's a nail that basically goes through the backing plate and holds that on. So when I use the tool, what I'm doing is I'm going to push in on this spring, and when I push in, I'm also going to twist. And I'm going to twist it so that that slot right there lines up with the head of that nail right there, so that the whole thing comes off. And here's the tool that I'm going to use for this. It has this little grippy inside here,
And when you push down, it actually holds on, and then we're going to twist. So push and twist 90 degrees. Push, twist, and it comes right off. Now it's the same thing here over on the right side, but there's the self-adjuster mechanism that's also here. Don't even worry about that because this is also holding that in place. But while I'm actually pushing in on this, I'm reaching around on the back of the backing plate and I'm pushing up on the nail head, or I'm holding it in place, because when I push in on this side, what I'm concerned about is that nail popping out the backing plate so that it's not actually allowing me to twist it. Also, I'm holding the nail in place when I do this. Take my hand, push on the nail in the back, get on here, twist it 90 degrees, and it comes right off. I'm going to set that down on the right side so that I can keep track of where it went. Now there's really only one thing holding this together and on here, and that's this spring and the self-adjuster assembly. And I'm just going to remove everything from the brake drum assembly all at once. I'm just going to grab it all and pull it off. So I'm actually going to first take off the self-adjuster assembly all as one piece. Just going to remove it all. This part here, this washer slash spring retainer thing, I'm just going to leave in place right now. But you don't have to remove this spring. Just leave this spring on here and this pivoting assembly. You don't have to take that stuff off. Just leave it all on there. Okay, so I've got it pulled off. Okay, and I'm just going to take the front shoe and just pull it forward and down like this. And that self-adjuster and that spring are going to fall right out of there. So that way I've got my front shoe off. I can just lay that front shoe up in there, and that just leaves my other assembly just sort of hanging and dangling there. My self-adjuster, I should have told you to make note of where the adjuster side was and make sure that stayed in that orientation, but that is pointing towards the back. Also, it may seem obvious, but you want the long side of the spring to allow clearance over here, because if you try to do the short side, it wouldn't work out. Now to get the shoe off the parking brake assembly, you'll notice there's like a little C-clip here that goes into this retaining pin, and I just take a flathead screwdriver, just insert it into, you'll see like a little slot here, insert it into the slot and twist. Just sort of leverage it off. Don't lose this clip. Keep an eye on that clip and don't let it go anywhere. Set that down. Now that clip is out of the way, that pin will just come right out, and that assembly will just lay right down, and you can install your new shoes. But we're going to prep the backing plate first. As you can see, I've already prepped the backing plate, but I'm going to come back and do it again. This strut brace here, you can just leave laying on top of the axle like I have here if you want. Or you can take it out and lay it on the ground, whatever. I just leave it in there because I know that I'm going to have to go back there anyhow. I did change the hardware, so I changed these pins and really just push them out the back. And they're that simple to replace, but now you get a better idea of at least what they look like and what you're dealing with. There's one on each side. And before I clean up the backing plate, I often take these out so that they're not flopping around while I'm cleaning these bosses here. Okay, now I've gone ahead and cleaned these up, and they're much better. And like I said, they will get these grooves in them. Sometimes I've seen these where these grooves are so bad that the shoes actually get hung up inside these grooves, and it'll cause a problem with brake application, or more importantly, brake release. So you'll let off the pedal and you'll hear a loud pop or something like that. That may be due to these things being just completely grooved up. There's one of two ways that you can handle this. If you're a good welder, you could, or you know somebody who's a good welder, you could have somebody come in, weld in these grooves, grind these things down to where they're flat again, and you'd be good to go. Or you're going to have to replace the backing plate. For this part, I've got copper anti-seize, is what this is, on a brush, and this is what I use, and this is the only place that I use lubrication back here. And I just put it on these areas where the shoes are going to make contact. There's these 6 areas here, and I don't need to goop it up too much. just enough to provide some lubrication. And that's it. That's all I do with them. Now before I reinstall the shoes, let's talk for a minute about the self-adjuster assembly. Let me just put it this way, this doesn't often live up to its namesake. And what happens is there are times where these threads will get rusted up. So what I do to address this is I will just unscrew this, but I'm just going to clean this with the wire wheel. Also, if this area in here is rusty, you can also do the same thing, because this is also supposed to turn and pivot, and there's a little shim there that can come off, so don't lose that. Now all I've done is just clean up the threads on this. And by the way, these threads on some go backwards, on this one they actually go forwards, but I used to grease this up for a while, and then I used to use anti-seize for a while, and then I stopped putting lubricants on this altogether. And the reason I stopped is because, think about it, you're in an environment, it's enclosed inside the drum, and any lubricant that you put on here, all the brake dust and everything that's created as those shoes wear down gets stuck on here, so pretty much it gums up the works. So what I've gotten in the habit of doing, rather than putting any kind of lubricants on these self-adjusters, is I've just been putting them in, I've just been cleaning them up, putting them back in just like this. And that's it. So that's all I've been doing. I haven't done anything else, and I've been just fine doing that. One of the things that you want to try to do is you want to try to avoid getting any kind of contaminants on the friction surface. And I actually had a friend of mine comment on one of my other videos, Big Block Mustang, and he says what you can do is you can take some masking tape and put it on the friction material before you begin work on the actual drum. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So there you can see that I have put masking tape on the friction material. I missed a little spot down here, but this way, as I'm working, if I get my fingerprints or whatever on here, so what? It's not going to get on the friction material, and then when I'm all done and I'm ready to do my adjustment, I can just peel the stuff off and I'm good to go. Right, now everything's cleaned up, lubed up, everything that's going to be is. So let's start our reassembly process, and I'm going to start that by inserting my two nails here. I don't really know what to call these, but retainer pins, whatever, and just insert those through the backing plate and let those hang there.